desk on your left. This is left, right? On your left, straight ahead on your left at the registration desk, you will find the washrooms. And then the Wi-Fi password is written right here. It's liquid at NG if you want to log into Wi-Fi. And I think that's it about rules. So a little bit about the Digital Policy Cafe, of which I know my boss will, or rather my colleague, will elaborate a little bit more. But this is the first time we are hosting a Digital Policy Cafe. The idea is to have an after-work, chill conversation with young people, folks in this space, just to cheer each other on, to learn from each other, etc., etc. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Boye. Adeboye, that's my cool boss, you guys. He's the coolest ever. So Boye, just officially welcome everyone on behalf of Paradigm Initiative, and then we can officially begin. Thank you.
All right, thanks, I was going to call you Lillian. Thanks, Miriam. And I want to say good evening to everybody. Thank you for honoring our invitation to this conversation today. I want to also use the opportunity to, on behalf of Paradigm Initiative, welcome you again, and to say that it's really a privilege for us to have an opportunity, to bring great minds like yours together to have important conversations such as this. Just as Miriam was saying, the Policy Cafe is a series of digital policy engagement series that we hosting at Paradigm Initiative to bring attention and important voices to development around digital policies on the continent, and to give different people an opportunity to contribute to that conversation, to contribute to the development of policies that are coming up in this age and at this time. You would agree with me that there are a lot of new and emerging technologies, and there are a lot of global conversations about how to regulate those technology. The EU AI Act was just introduced. Digital Services Act became operationalized, I think, 2 months ago or so. So these regulations are coming up globally, and you would expect that in Africa, we would also want to kind of follow suit, try to develop our own regulation about these issues. And if you've been working on policies for some time, you will notice that most times all we just simply do is do copy and paste of whatever is applicable in Europe and try to apply it to our context. But we think it's important that we should be able to create our own approach to regulating these issues. And these are the kind of thinking that birthed this idea to have this kind of conversation in different cities in Africa. Like Miriam said, this is the first edition, but we are going to have other editions in Lusaka, in Abuja, in Lagos, in Harare, right? In Dakar, and in different cities across Africa, just to bring issues, to the fore and to give opportunity to diverse stakeholders, people who probably typically will not sit in the kind of rooms where these policy conversations are happening. So again, I want to say welcome to all of you. My job is very simple, and it's just to welcome you, and also to specially welcome the Deputy Commissioner. Thanks again for honoring our invitation. It's really a pleasure to have you join us for this conversation. So at this juncture, I will hand over the microphone back to Miriam so that we can get into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boye. And for anyone else who's just joining, we are just beginning, and also to let you know that there are people globally who are following this conversation in Nigeria, in Abuja, particularly in Abuja, in Lagos, our head office, and also if you're just joining from Kenya or anywhere else, we want to especially welcome you to this conversation if you're joining online. That said, I would want us to begin, And I have the pleasure of inviting someone I really, really admire, someone I kind of stalk in a good way, someone I've had speak multiple times. And, you know, I really, really appreciate the work that you do and the work that the office does wholesomely. And again, this kind of conversation, if you don't know what they do as well, this is the time to understand what the commission does, what the office does, what's the essence of the data protection Act and any other policy around that. So just feel free. It will be very conversational. I haven't told you guys to introduce yourselves for a reason, because everyone will hold a mic at some point, right? So there's no hierarchy whatsoever. Feel comfortable. The sofas are to make you feel comfortable. And don't worry, we will feed you. We'll feed you afterwards. That said, guys, help me welcome Rose Musero with a round of applause as she speaks to us, and then we can open this up to everyone. Karibu sana.
Hi, everyone. I don't know whether I should sit. Maybe it's more comfortable. Yeah. I think sitting might work best. As has been mentioned, I'm Rose Musero. I'm the Deputy Data Commissioner at the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner in Kenya. I wasn't given speaking notes, so I'll just speak about the office, and then I'll speak about the policy, data protection specifically, and then jump into AI and whether I guess the Data Protection Act in Kenya is adequate for the AI revolution that we're in at the moment. So in terms of data protection in Kenya, for the ones that are in the policy space here, it came about because of the constitutional right to privacy that's in the constitution, obviously, of Kenya. But we didn't necessarily, or we didn't have a firm law that speaks to privacy and specifically speaks to issues of data, especially in this digital world. So in terms of transfers of data, in terms of trade, we were restricted in that respect. In terms of usage of information, so if you're, I guess majority of you here are in Kenya, but the ones that are catching us online, anytime you go into a building, anytime you go, well, anywhere, anyone feels like they had the right to ask you for your information, had the right to know your name, your number, your ID number, passport number, could even be the name of your parents. And so there was a need to have this rectified. One of the other key factors really the enactment of the Data Protection Act was the Huduma number at that point, which is was a digital ID initiative in Kenya. And we're seeing it relevant, especially now with the Maisha number issues that we're having as well, which is a digital ID, and effectively just seeing how we can protect citizens. So as an office, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner is relatively new for a government agency. It's about 3 years old. You might have heard of us through the enforcement notices that we're doing, the fines, the conversations that we have, such as this. But effectively what we are is a regulator of all. We regulate specifically aspects of data protection that are, I guess, under our mandate under the Data Protection Act. I'll speak about effectively why I feel that the Data Protection Act was necessary, not just in particular for the Huduma number issue, but just generally for us as a country. We got into a space, I guess, in 2018 where the GDPR came into effect. For me, I think the key issues that we have as a country in terms of data protection was in terms of trade, our interoperability, our interconnectedness, the fact that we are using platforms that are available to us here, but not necessarily governed or regulated by people here. So we didn't quite have that framework where we could say, okay, if you're giving information to an organization in the EU or an organization in Australia or in the US, that you would really be protected. Now we do have that. There's so many flow over effects as well with respect to that in terms of being able to exercise your rights, in terms of enabling digital trade, in terms of even boosting our economy, to say the least. And so for me, the Data Protection Act was something that was groundbreaking, that has effectively, I guess, multiple benefits, not only for the protection of digital rights, but also in terms of enabling innovators, enabling entrepreneurs, enabling youth to be able to actually take their innovations, their businesses, their ideas out into the world. And so that was, in my view, probably the biggest win with respect to data protection, the Data Protection Act. It enabled us to participate on a global scale, but also for Kenya, it put us on the map in terms of being a leader as it comes to, or when it comes to data protection. Now, with AI, and I think one of the questions that was asked is the Data Protection Act suitable for AI? And with this, I'll have to just step back a little and speak as not as Rose Macero, Deputy Data Commissioner, but as Rose Macero, just an individual in this space, because the government hasn't pronounced itself on this particular issue, and so I do not want to preempt because I do not know. But as a practitioner, do I feel that the Data Protection Act is adequate? No. The reason I don't feel that it's adequate is because AI goes way beyond data protection, right? AI looks at issues of intellectual property, issues of transparency that go far beyond what the Data Protection Act offers. It goes beyond just individual rights of data privacy. It goes to solutions. It encompasses a lot more than what the Data Protection Act actually encompasses. Now, I think this is even clearer with the approach that has been taken with the EU in terms of having an AI Act, which I think is still the negotiations for that have been finalized, so hopefully we'll see something come up in the next few years. But that approach is something that I personally would like to see happen in Kenya as well, where we have a specific policy that targets the nuances of data protection, but also in the Kenyan context or in the African context, what would be great to see is not only an act that looks at AI, but also a framework that looks at how we can empower youth in our space to actually participate actively in the benefits of AI. So for example, most of us here, we have our gadgets, we're able to connect with the world, we're able to actually utilize AI to our benefits, but majority of the people that could potentially come up with innovations and solutions around AI, whether it's in health, it's in agriculture or whatever it is, don't actually have the tools. So unfortunately, unlike the rest of the world, unlike the EU, where they are grappling with how exactly do they just regulate AI, we're grappling with issues of the digital divide, and so that needs to actually be addressed before we have an AI regulation that would actually be fit for purpose. Another thing that I find that perhaps is a consideration that we should have on a policy scale is, I guess, issues of, this is not just the digital divide, but also in terms of education. How do we then boost the learnings from primary level all the way to tertiary education to actually enable people to understand, to build, to innovate, to ideate around AI and things like this. So that's something that also needs to be addressed when we're talking about AI. So the policy considerations for us are not just in terms of, do we have a fit for purpose policy? Do we have regulations that can deal with AI? Does the Data Protection Act cater for this? Unfortunately, because of our situation, and I think this is the same for very many African nations, we have to go back and say, okay, fine, how do we get ourselves to a point where we can actively and properly participate in this space and actually have benefit, have African solutions or Kenyan solutions in the AI field that are beneficial and can also be escalated to a global scale. So this is something that we need to do. But one of the things, and I think this was touched on before about us copy-pasting, and I will say that even though Kenya's Data Protection Act does look very much like the GDPR, which is deemed to be the international standard, it is very nuanced, and it had considerations, even the regulations have considerations that are specific to the Kenyan context. And I can say this knowing, because I participated in the drafting of the Act and in the drafting of the regulations. There were some things that were not fit for purpose for us, and so we did not accommodate that. And there were things that were beneficial to us, which we accommodated. Now, is it perfect? Not necessarily, but the first time around in terms of regulations, it's never going to be perfect. But what we can do in this space, and what we hope to do, and I think some of these initiatives have been taken from even the top office, is to influence discussions that are happening around AI on a global scale. So for example, we have, I think, a couple of Kenyans participating in the UN AI Global Forum, which is really good for us to do. But even in terms of communication to EU, terms of communication as Africa, where we come together and we say, as AU, this is what we're doing in the AI space, this is what we wish to achieve, and very specific targets. And I'm not talking about the AU data policy specifically. I'm saying let's come up with something, and I think this is something that's in development, but something where nations, in terms of policy, as well as the technicians and the experts and the people working in this field, can say, okay, fine, this policy document can then be adopted and filtered through to us, because it has touched on the issues that are faced by Kenyans, they're touched on the issues that are faced by Tanzanians, by Ghanaians, by Zambians, or whatever it is. We don't have that yet. And until we have that as Kenya, until we have that as Africa, it is very difficult for us to then say this is Africa to the world, or this is Kenya to the world, and this is what we're doing, because we will still be following. We'll have the EU AI Act come into place, and we'll look at it and we'll say, because this is already being adopted, we will have to adopt it as well and customize it to our scales, but then it will not be something that will consider everything else that we have at play in our arena. So, I mean, I think I don't know how long I've spoken for, but I feel like I've spoken quite a bit. But those are just my thoughts. Again, as I've said, the government hasn't pronounced itself on AI issues as yet. And so when I speak about, you know, fit for purpose and whether the Data Protection Act is suitable, I'm speaking as Rose. That being said, if there was any considerations about whether a new office should be set up, or whether there should just be an expansion of AI regulation around the Data Protection Commission, the Office of Data Protection Commissioner, I think that probably would be suitable in terms of regulation, because they are, you can't have effectively one without another. Obviously, there's accountability, transparency, issues that come into play in terms of collection of information, usage of information, generation of information. And so it would be great to see something in terms of regulation space coming into the Office of Data Protection Commissioner. But as of now, we do regulate the AI space from a data protection perspective, but we do not have enough regulatory leeway, I will say, to go beyond just the issues of data protection to actually look at the other broader AI considerations and the technology aspects of AI as we would like. So we're really looking at it as a cross-cutting issue across different government regulatory agencies. And so it would be really good to see one unified approach when it comes to that, and one organization that deals with that in Kenya as well. So I'll leave it there, and I'll pass it back to Miriam.
Thank you. Thank you, Rose. That's a very good place to start. There's so many things that you've sort of suggested, and I know a few people would want to think otherwise, support, but before we open it up, Rix, karibu sana. I want you to help me break this ice in this room. That's the mandate I have given you. That's the task. Utawezana? Utajaribu ama utawezana? First of all, introduce yourself. So the rule is, once this mic gets to you, there's another fancier mic that is somewhere. Once the mic gets to you, you introduce yourself, the organization you work for, and anything interesting you think you want to share. So we can start with you, break the ice, and then we'll continue this conversation. Apo sawa? Apo sawa? Aye.
Introducing myself.
Yeah, introducing yourself. No, and then
Okay, cool. Good evening. My name is Onyango Otieno, also known as Rix or Rix Poet. I am a writer and storyteller. I use storytelling to create awareness on sexual and reproductive health and rights, mental health, and digital advocacy. My mandate here today, I am here to perform a very short poem that I'm hoping will be interesting to you. And I'm hoping, I want to stand while you're doing this. It's cool. The last couple of, maybe a year or so, it's been really interesting seeing how revolutionary AI can be in the workplace, but also in our individual lives. For those of us who didn't know so much about proposal writing, for example, and then ChatGPT showed up, and these days you don't have to pay so much money to people to get some of these things done. AI is going to continue to revolutionize even how we date, how we meet partners. I can only imagine maybe today, maybe 5 years from now, you're going to be going home and your mother is going to be asking you, so where did you meet your partner? You know? And you'll probably say, oh, well, I don't know if that works for you, but do our parents know what Bumble is or Tinder? Because it's not the same way as things were when people are meeting in the marketplace. So, you know, these are the places. Life is changing pretty fast. In the spirit of experimenting whether we are ready for AI disruption, I asked ChatGPT-4 to write a poem with me on what I need to do and know in order to run a successful relationship in Nairobi. And this is what we came up with. Successful, happy relationship in Nairobi. What do I need to do? Nairobi, the city that never sleeps. Finding love sounds pretty easy, like fitting hand in glove, but making it work, that's the real dance. So here's a little corny guide to enhance your romance. First, you must learn to navigate the matatu routes of the heart, where stages of relationship are pretty much overpopulated areas, from friend zone stop to more than friends avenue, kumeja. Pay your dues in patience and a window seat will come to you. Kama kiti haina seatbelt, be sure to be thrown about by the huge potholes down Character Development Road. Remember, in Nairobi, timing is more than a tick. It's knowing when to send that uko wapi text real quick, but beware of Nairobi traffic in your lover's excuse. It can be a real jam or electrician amekuja kutengeneza fuse. And in this city, where Hakuna Matata is the creed, be prepared for love that comes in different speed. Some will love in that Ilimradi Swahili, some in Sheng Tezo, some in silence, some in Chapondondo, some in I don't do 50-50, some in violence. I say again, be prepared for love that comes in different speed. You meet a babe today and her IG stories are all about my man, my man, my man. After the first fight, you're a dog. Communication in Nairobi is a mix of, babe, I want us to be transparent, and premium gaslighting. So learn to say nakupenda and mean it in every twang. Don't save your lover with their real name on your phone if you want peace. They must be babe or kipenzi cha roho yangu if that will even fit on your Android screen. And when things get heated, as they will sometimes, remember pole and samahani. can soften any ill. Despite it all, you will still meet some psychos who very happily cheat and say it's your small kitchen that led them to eat another person's wheat. But fret not, fret not. This is Nairobi. Your neighbor can help you with a little salt when you don't have some in your pochi. When your person isn't texting back because they're out there with their mbogi, you can call your bestie. Bestie. Nairobi, the city that never sleeps. We all want love that is for keeps, but I hear love is for the birds and the bees. Maybe, if we are lucky, one of us here will get his keys. Thank you so much.
Snap, 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 snap. You need ChatGPT. Ama, who hurt you, bro? Who hurt you? Ati msanii ni kioo cha jamii. It's not you, it's not a personal story. All right, thank you so much, Rix. We'll have another one. Probably maybe from ChatGPT, we don't know this day and age, but thank you so much. So we are getting to the exciting part, right? Where everyone sort of tells us about themselves, mostly about the topic we are talking about today, data protection, AI, literally things we do on a day-to-day. And if you're just coming in, you're not late. don't feel, I'm not looking at you. Why are you feeling guilty? Bridget, it's not you I'm talking about. So Rose had started the conversation to just guide us on whether or not, our act is solid enough to weather the AI storm, right? And if I remember correctly, she said, and she was alluding to, can we maybe start thinking of a different office that will cater to, just matters AI? I don't know what you guys think about that. Do you agree? And again, Kenyans, I know you, this is not a grilling session, tafadhali. It's not a grilling session. It's not Gava versus us. Sawa sawa? We're in agreement, right? So, as I said, no hierarchy. Just your broad thoughts around data protection, AI. Are we ready as a country? This is a very critical week for us to think inwardly and strategize moving forward. I think it will be an excellent opportunity for us to hear what us folks in the civil society, academia space think, whether or not our act is solid enough and what sort of frameworks we need to build around it. Sawa sawa? As I said, start your name, organization, what you think about the topic, and anything interesting you'd want us to know. So I'll just start with a random question. A very general question. Where you sit, given the work that you do, is our act solid enough to prepare us for the AI storm? Because whether we like it or not, it's coming, it's already here, right? So do we think we have a solid enough act? I don't know who's willing to. Where's our fancy mic? There was a fancy mic that we had. No? Okay. Yeah, it can just go around. No worries. Yeah. Name?
Hi everyone. My name is Maureen Kasuku, and I organize with Feminist Conversations Kenya. Feminist Conversations Kenya is a grassroots feminist collective, and we have a lot of conversations on a lot that is happening around us. And today I'm here because I'm particularly interested in what data protection means from a gendered lens, a class lens, and so when it comes to the Data Protection Act of 2019, I feel like we really need to catch up because AI is evolving at a really worrying pace. Just the other day in the US, this famous singer, Taylor Swift, you might know her. So Taylor Swift had, there were these very unsavory images that were on the internet, were on social media platforms. Basically, it was AI porn, and it was very worrying that these images were everywhere, and like there was a new one all the time. So it's become a concern for the legislators in the US. They're working around that, and I'm not sure if they have a specific law to look into this. And I feel like this is a very urgent issue. So Rose, I'm wondering, like, who can take this up? Which legislatures can take this up? Because the pace in which AI is evolving is a bit worrying. I'm concerned about like child pornography and all the terrible things that may come out of this, but also, you know, just understanding the promise of AI and all the amazing things you can do with AI. But I'm like really concerned about what the Data Protection Act is going to do about this, and if Kenyan MPs, Kenyan legislators can look at this with the urgency that it deserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that, I missed that fancy mic. Let me just interject, and I want to throw someone under the bus who deals directly with child online protection. He wakes up every day to go to the office and work around child online protection. So you've mentioned something around you know, all the nuances, let me not repeat. Do you think, and it's excellent because you sit in government, we have solid frameworks, solid policies to prevent what Maureen was talking about. You know I'm talking about you. So, yeah. What you do? And how bad is the situation?
Hi, I'm Kevin Mwitinyaga. I work for Directorate of Children's Services, a department called Child Online Protection. It's new. We're about 1 year old. Ideally, what she's bringing up is very, very, we are facing a lot of challenges, but right now it's not really in Kenya or Africa. People have not gotten to that part where they're using AI for, what to call it, madness. And I'll mention again, I'm not here as a representative of the directorate. I'm here as Kevin, right? Please. We have not gotten to a point where people are using AI to generate this, we call it sexual material for children. Yeah? My specialty is children. I don't know about the rest. And my specialty is actually child protection, online, right? So we don't have any policies on AI. We don't even our institutions. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, I don't know. Our institutions like in USIU, I don't know if they have done anything. These great institutions, sorry, again, I'm not mentioning institutions, I'm just saying the good ones have not gotten to a place where they have programs for AI, even teaching people about them. Ama, there is one that you know about in Kenya that is teaching on AI. A tertiary institution, a registered one. I don't know of any. So before we can jump into this thing for AI policy and what it is going to do, we actually need to get experts on the field, right? With our expert in data privacy, there are a lot of experts who need to learn how to go about AI, because they need to be taught, then they can cascade that information down, right? So for now, it's a huge challenge actually. The German T-Mobile did an ad that they were spreading all over the world. These parents who keep posting their children online, T-Mobile took a video of a child and created a whole documentary somewhere about that child. So when the parents walk into a cinema, they find that their child, as a grown-up, is talking to them. It's somewhere, find it, it's online. So it's actually like we are trying we are still learning. We are 1 year old, we are still learning. We have a lot of laws and regulations on data protection and children protection online. That is the Children's Act already. What we are lacking is a bit of coordination here and there, because ideally we are all kind of doing the same job, but I'm working as myself, she's working as herself, she's working as herself, so we're all doing the same thing, but in small pockets, so the impact won't be as big. If we merged, like I say, like 1 is stronger than 5. That's in a movie. Kaburo Nanga, 1 is stronger than 5. So if we are one, we go somewhere. Thank you.
Sorry. Yesterday, I participated at a session by Access Now, and something so important came up. I think you were quoting, was it Section 8 of the Act, where it talks about collaboration. And the first thing when Kevin came in, I asked, do you guys work with the office? Because they do a lot of online data protection, but just for kids. And they said, I don't even think the office, the commission knows we exist. I'd want you, Bridget, to talk a little bit about collaboration and also touch on whether or not we need to have another separate office that takes care of AI, or first harmonize what we have currently and expound a little bit more of for people who are not there at the conversation yesterday in terms of collaboration.
Thank you. My name is Bridget Tandere. I'm a senior policy analyst at Access Now, which is a global nonprofit that works in digital rights. So as Miriam has mentioned, we launched a paper on data protection yesterday, not yesterday, but yesterday we had an event to officially launch it. And one of the things that we talk about in that paper is automated decision making, which is something that has become very synonymous with AI. And AI in itself, like ADM is not AI in its entirety, but a lot of people refer to ADMs as AI, right? And you know, a lot of the time when we're talking about AI, you'll hear about LLMs, you'll just hear about the same thing over and over again, chatbots and LLMs and all these really cool sounding things. But the reality is that it's more than that, you know, it's things about social welfare, housing, economic and social rights. And so when we talk about collaboration, there is definitely a need for this. Multi-stakeholderism is going to be one of the most important things that we can implement in this, if I can call it a fight, just to be very dramatic, for more protections and better protections for people. And it's not just about children, it's not just about women, it's about everyday person, and especially people at the margins, community at the margins. And you know, whether or not we need to formulate an office, I don't think that is a priority necessarily. Of course, when you look at the Data Protection Act and its regulations as well, there are certain things that are covered within the Act to do with automated decision making, especially things to do with human intervention, things to do with notification and breaches, things like this. All very well covered, thoroughly covered within the law. But at the same time, it's not the only thing that we should rely on for protections, because artificial intelligence in its nature is inherently discriminatory. I do not like artificial intelligence or automated decision making, especially when it comes to human life, because it creates more harm. And even if you look at some of the models that we borrow from, and yesterday I'm sure you heard so many people mention GDPR and EU law, UK law when it comes to data protection and privacy, but even they're getting it wrong to a huge extent with their AI law. When you think about, it's not just about, again, the private companies that have these very cool chatbots and little things that you can use to create a cool image of yourself, but it's also service provision from government. It's decision making at government level when it comes to health, other economic rights, social rights, provision of welfare, and how do we make sure that the people at the margins are not pushed further into the margins? Because again, the biggest thing right now, for me at least, many people will have a different opinion, but the biggest thing that the EU has gotten wrong right now with their AI legislation is that the people that develop this artificial intelligence systems, or ADMs, get to decide for themselves how high risk, low risk a system is. That's such a huge gap. And I think at the end of the day, that happens a lot. It's replicated itself in a lot of systems around the world, not just with AI laws, but even with data protection laws, with impact assessment laws, with compliance reporting. People get to decide for themselves the level of risk. There's no standardization. And so if I get to say that my system is low risk, who's to say that it's not? where does the regulator come in? So I think for me, it's not so much that we need another office, it's that we need stronger regulation. Whether this takes the form of building on the laws that we already have, or formulating new framework and legislation around AI specifically, which would be really great, so that we can kind of build something from scratch and hopefully we don't borrow too much, something that we then have a problem implementing. I think the first step should be that, working in collaboration with other laws and other offices, other authorities that are already in place, instead of formulating another office that doesn't quite have the necessary basis for it to exist and implement the laws that exist and, you know, to protect people's rights and well-being.
Lovely. Just borrowing from the last point that you've made, AI-specific policy, yay or nay. Different people have different opinions on that, but we need to harmonize what we already have. So, Kapio, just because you're near me, and plus you're one of my favorite people, AI-specific laws, or do we build and build on to the act, for instance, frameworks around it, or just AI-specific law moving forward?
Interesting. Oh, okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Victor Capio from Kictanet. What was the question? AI. I think that it's struggling because AI is a cross-cutting issue. It's not just for data, it's for many things, and is also multi-sectoral and has different impact depending on how it's being used. And so I think because today we are talking about privacy, then we need to think of how are our privacy legislation responsive to emerging technologies, because now we are talking about AI, but next year there's probably going to be something else. So how do we ensure that we are able to look at the impact of existing legislation on emerging technologies and either develop laws in ways that provide room for wide interpretation, or regularly revisit the existing legislation to look at the areas that haven't been addressed, so that we are regularly reviewing and keeping abreast with the changes in technology. I think we are living in an era where it's not like 50 years ago when we had these guys make the Penal Code 1963, and it ran for 50 years before we amended any provision. I think especially where there is technology, that is important to regularly look at our laws and see whether there are opportunities for review or developing new legislation, especially where there is potential or significant human rights impact, especially now if you're talking about AI and privacy. But also at the same time, that can't happen if we don't have stakeholders who are also regularly engaging in that conversation to assess the impact, engaging with researchers to conduct the studies that can help us see the different scenarios as they potentially could emerge, and also have regulators who also have their fingers, or is it the thumbs on the ground? What is the expression? Yeah, you have the ears on the ground, sort of, yeah, where they're alive to what these changes and how those new changes are impacting how they regulate. Because we need to have an era of smart regulators, because it's not, we're living in an era where the regulators can't sit back and wait for things to happen. They have to know and anticipate what is potentially could happen from the adoption of these technologies. How does it affect? Is it within the scope of the things they regulate? Is it not? And if there's significant interest of significant harm, what can they do? So I think it requires a lot of strategies, and the law is just one of those tools in the box, like the hammers and the nails. I think all of us have a role, and we need to know which tool to pick when. Yeah.
Agreed. I'm very tempted to come to Irene. Very tempted, but if anyone has a dissenting opinion, view, this is, again, free space, no hierarchy. You can jump in real quick. Or to support, I'm just looking for someone who wants to speak into that. But Irene Capio, yeah, sure.
Just a quick one, yeah. Also, like when we're talking about all these AI issues and everything we're talking about being online, one of my biggest challenges in my job is when I go up country and try to tell people why the internet is good. And all they hear on TV and on social media is why the internet is bad. Now you're trying to explain to someone who maybe sees a computer maybe once every week, just an example, right? And you're trying to tell them the advantages of being online, right? But all they hear online is the negative that comes with the internet. So also let's also shift our conversation, because ideally we are killing our job, right? If we don't have internet, like we don't protect children from online, right? So let's shift that conversation. Every time we come in, we do these things as practitioners in this space. Let's always start with the positives. Because we are always bashing, and we know this is what is happening. That is what is prevalent. What is prevalent is the evil. That's what people really engage in. That's what people enjoy. That's what people sell, right? But if that's the word you are spreading to that mamamboga somewhere in Meru, that you will die, like this AI can steal your money in your bank just like that. Hakuna vile atakubali mtoto, sorry for using Swahili, I'm just stressing it. There is no way atakubali mtoto wake ashike simu. You won't even convince them, they will refuse. And that brings about another thing, which brings about inequality. That is why we are still struggling and asking why children in Marsabit and children in Nairobi are being graded the same. You get? It's an issue that their resources are not the same. They don't come from the same place. They don't have the same teachers. They don't have the same equipment. You get? So it's bringing disparity when we keep bashing the internet, right? So let's always lead with telling people what it can do for them. Then, but we can put that disclaimer, but if you don't watch out, you'll end up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then that way we can have positive conversations. Just a point of note, thank you.
Data protection, the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner should be empowered to use AI or to regulate AI. What I also did say is that data protection and the Act specifically is not adequate for AI simply because AI is a lot more broader and perhaps has more nuances rather than data protection itself. Now, data protection deals only with personal data relating to an identified or identifiable person, whereas AI can use information that is generated from anonymized data and make decisions about an individual, which means that it wouldn't fall within the ambit. There's also issues of the right to privacy that actually encapsulates or forms a basis or foundation for data protection, whereas AI and the basis of AI should be from a technology aspect. And so in that regard, that's why I'm a proponent for two separate regulations, but I am not a proponent for having two separate offices. And I said if it was up to me, we would have it in the same office. But that's, I guess, a legislative issue that would have to come about.
Could I just speak up? My name is Howie from Kijiji and Internet Society of Kenya. I think we rush into looking at the end instead of looking at the beginning, because conceptualization, the conception of AI is the beginning of problems and privacy, and looking at where is the identity of a Kenyan or an African community. even the use of the term AI already makes our identity as citizens to become a problem. Two, connecting it to the education system that we have been practiced in schools and in communities. Does AI feature because this is where the discussion needs to be taken so that our children can start adaptation to systems that can also respect their needs and concerns. The last point is that when you talk about securitization, when you talk about respect of rights, is it localized? Does it mean anything to a woman who's selling githeri, a man who's a barber shop, or someone who's pulling up a trail? Because for me, that is the discussion. Because if we can able to get that AI discussion into that space, then for me that will become a very fundamental issue. Thank you.
You want to comment? Okay, great. Localization, bringing it closer to the people, and someone who does this for a living, I want to bring you on board. How can we localize and things around even human rights within data protection? How can we localize? And I know you do such an amazing job at the community, so I'll bring it back to you. But do you want to probably comment? And Rose, I hear you on empowering the office. I 100% hear you.
Thanks, Miriam. That caught me off guard. Yes, struggling to arrange my thoughts. But nonetheless, my name is Victor Ndede. I work with Amnesty International as the Technology and Human Rights Manager, looking after our work on data governance and digital rights for children and young people. When I think about localization, I've actually been a proponent around concerted efforts at a regional level. When you look at AI regulation and even data protection, the big players in the space, in my view, look at us as markets. And in our divided market, enforcement becomes very weak. They become a very dominant player. And so it becomes very difficult to enforce some of these things against the big players. And we do know who the big players are, even just within the data space before we go into the AI space. And I think that has also seen the successes we keep seeing in Europe, for example, where the negotiations are done at a regional level. You look at decisions either coming from the EU Data Protection Board. But here in Africa, we'll have either the ODPC in Kenya fighting one part of the fire, but that fire is being fueled in another market for that company or player. And so it really defeats purpose if we do not collegiate at a regional level and say, these people, when they, and I mean, we have seen all the wonderful presentations from big tech in this country and how Africa is a huge market for them, growing market for them, but here is where the least investments are in protections and even compliance. And so my views have been that, of course, looking and coming from a human rights organization is that, of course, we do agree that human rights are universal. And so anyone, any part of this world should enjoy rights as they are. And so if human rights are universal, there's no value at all for us to split our efforts in country and say, let us localize our interventions on AI. It's good to localize them and perhaps be a pioneer country in how we think AI should be regulated. But I think in the long run, it's going to be very difficult for countries to fight or push back. We do know some of these players, their budgets by far outmatch budgets of very many African countries, even combined. And so you look at how much money some of these big tech companies even spend on just lobbying, you clearly see we are fighting a losing battle. And it has been the case because right now guys are discussing AI in Europe and pushing the AI Act. It's a chance for us not to play catch up again as we did with data protection, because you see the continent still lags behind. You just look at the sign-ons onto the Malabo Convention. I mean, it took us how many years just to get that convention operationalized? It speaks to the political will in this space. It speaks to our interest in this space, because you see also the politicians also react to what the citizenry demand. And so do people really value what most of us here work on? And so either we are just, of course, preaching to the choir or something of that sort. So my intervention really is, let's push some of these conversations regionally. Let us work together at that level, and so that our voice is stronger, and they look at us as an African market that if they get, because you see in Europe they worry because they'll be shut out of a European market, which is huge for them. But here they think, Kenya stopped some company from operating, but they're upbeat that we'll be able to get operational licenses in other countries which are similar markets as Kenya. And so we still lose. Looking at it also from a regional level, it makes no sense for us to have, say, a proper data protection law here in Kenya, a proper data protection authority set up here in Kenya, but we do operate in an integrated regional community. I mean, just at the EAC level, we had the two stages of integration, the common markets and the customs union, which means there's free movement of labor, goods, all these things, which means also free movement of data. So what's the point if Kenya, you say your data is protected in Kenya, but you trade with a company HQ'd in a country that has no data protection law? Defeats purpose. So yeah, I'll cede the mic. Thank you.
Localization, regionalization, or both, strengthen both? Yeah, okay.
There's something we always miss out in the conversation, and I'm a big proponent of, is hiring locally. We don't create opportunities for our youth who are talented. Some are self-taught, super data scientists. There's really something that is not in us to think that we are enough, or we are capable, or we are talented. And it's something that I would like for us to create more room to have conversations on, and to also think around it, especially Civitex in the room, so that now we'll be speaking solutions, because we'll have created opportunities for the youth to work in, AI. We'll also have created opportunity for them to see what are the issues in Africa, for them to also help us troubleshoot. So for me, hiring locally. My name is Irene Mwendwa. I work for Policy. Policy is a Civitech organization based in Uganda, and we work on the intersections of data and technology. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janga Kimani. I work at Siasa Place. We are doing some work on technology, and especially within the angle of the rights of people who work within the digital space, the gig economy. And I would like to start from where Irene has left. We've seen a lot of young people going into the gig economy, where we have a lot of automated decision making, where people rely on platforms to make a living. For example, Uber, we have Upwork, all these platforms, Airbnb. So we have a lot of reliance on platforms to make a living. And some of these platforms, how they are coached, we see a lot of artificial intelligence aspects within how some of these platforms operate. But when you think about people who rely on these platforms to make a living, are they employees of these platforms, or are they just independent contractors? Sometimes you might think they're independent contractors, but the platforms themselves exercise a lot of substantial control over what they do. For example, they could close the platform, they could block you. Some of them have control about how many hours you work. So it looks as if it's an employment, but it looks like it's an independent contractor, but it's, this platform actually, they are actually employees if you look at the amount of control that they have. So some of these platforms are, AI based. They rely on several factors to make decisions. For example, the decision on whether to block you because you violated a certain policy. There is no human element in it. So if we have an artificial intelligence making such automated decisions that take away, for example, your right to work, that take away your living, then surely we need to think about, the impact of this system in itself. Another aspect that comes to play, especially when you think about in the context of young people, is AI and intellectual property rights. For example, the Copyright Act does not really envisage a situation whereby an author or someone can create content using artificial intelligence. It defines an author as someone who oversees, a natural person. It doesn't envisage that some artificial intelligence can actually create some of these things that we see. It can actually write code. It can actually do some of these things. So if at all artificial intelligence is relying on a lot of big data, like Victor is saying, that transcends boundaries. So is it possible then that it's taking away personal data of so many people, even anonymized, to create systems that in turn people use to, to make money out of it? Yet you've not given credit to where all this information is gotten from, intellectual property. So there's a potential of having intellectual property rights violations through artificial intelligence, especially where we don't have enough safeguards. Bridget talked about automated decision making. We saw where some companies use AI to decide whether to hire someone or not, go through CVs. And there was actually a test that was seen with Amazon, how discriminatory it is. So human rights violation through automated decision making. And the Data Protection Act only says that someone has the right to, to refuse to have their data processed. But does it envisage a situation whereby this data transcends boundaries, where there are intellectual property rights violation? So there is need to review the act so that it's forward thinking, and so that it envisages some of these, scenarios, and provides remedies, especially where we have breach, especially with intellectual property rights, and also to have safeguards to protect workers who work in the digital spaces, and not have AI systems detect what they do or violate, their rights, and then we say, oh, it's not me, it's the system. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're supposed to have a short break for refreshments, but it has touched you at a personal level.
Hey everyone. I'm Rian. I work with Mirror Arts, queer artist collective, working with queer artists in Nairobi. Okay, in Dandora and its environs. Wacha tu nibakishie hapo, sijui mbona inataka kuni stretch. Yes. One, I want to pick points from everyone who's talking, kwa sababu ameongelea story ya jobs, right? And intellectual properties and working with artists. Naona pale msanii mwenza ameanza na kusema they wrote a poem with ChatGPT. And how will that impact us as artists moving forward? Also in the same, working also within Mirror Arts and working on SRHR security. And we have seen, of course, internet has created a safe haven for some queers, and also it has also created a lot of wars, you know, and traumas for others. And that comes with a bit of security. The other bit, of course, ni yenye tu ameongelea bado tu ya ku income generating activities. Kwa sababu one, the reason as to why MA, one of the objectives that we are existing or why we are working is so that we can create income for the queer artists in the informal settlements. So how will that affect us? Positively and also negatively. Kwa sababu hata kwanza tukianza kuongelea story ya sijui data protection, I know most of my members don't know shit about that. So like where do we start? Kwa sababu naona tuko mbali, nyi mko mbali. Yani mko fourth year in uni, sasa ndio tunaingia form 1. Like how do we go around all of that? Yeah.
And I remember we had a conversation and I was asking you, as young people and as a representative of such a critical demography in not just Nairobi but Africa, how would you want us in this space to break down something like the Data Protection Act for you to embrace it and be part of this journey? We'd never quite finished that conversation. Instead of saying, everyone in the sector is so far behind, you're leaving us, now tell us, we are here, we have government, you have civil society, tell us, how do you want us to make it so interesting for you that you can adopt and just move along?
Kuna nilikuwa nataka kumuita mzee but nikakumbuka walisema mzee ni Jomo Kenyatta peke yake. There is a gentleman mwenye ameongelea story ya localization of all of these, the AI story na data policy, data protection policy and all of that. Hatujui, tafadhalini tutafuteni. Let's with you kidogo as we move, kwa sababu as not being in the know-how of how the AI operates or how data policy venye iko and even how it can protect us, it does not mean that we are still not creating. We are still creating. Iki happen yenye tumecreate and then mtu akuja aseme sijui yake imeenda, sijui imechukuliwa na mtu mwingine. How do we go about that? So please tutafuteni, let's take this information. Kwa sababu hata pia angalia kwenye mmetulete. Okay, this is a good start. At least this is a good start. At least I and a fellow, some few other persons that we are working with kwa grassroots tuko. But then how also do we facilitate? Kwa sababu yes, naweza chukua information nika disseminate huko kwa ground, but how do you help us to disseminate it effectively also? Siku kuja mnatupatia one forum, mnatumwagia everything pa. Tukifika hapo, kwa sababu one as artists, how do we even process information? Mkikuja mtuweke kwa room for an entire day, how do we even, unajua mkitulete kama Rix pale atupige mistari 3, ameenda ame create art on this, amekuja ametupatia, tutai digest haraka. But look for us, at least. Yes, look for us. Let us have these forums and pia mashinani. Mimi naweza fika au wengine waizi. Tafadhalini. Also yes, story na localization, and I know also Rix will agree. Art will also do that. Kwa sababu ile mama mboga hata toka pale kwa kibanda yake sijui amekuja kwa a room mumfundishe story ya data na nini ama AI, but saa zenye kuko na skit hapo kwa ground, kwa field, ameiona akiwa tu pale kwa hustle yake, anaidigest na we can move. Okay, that was a suggestion or was it a recommendation? Thank you.
Rix, umetafutiwa kazi. Just like that. You needed to add something before we...
Yeah, for me, mine is quick. It's just a suggestion on what Rian has said. Or I'm Michelle, I'm also from Mirror Arts. So what you're saying about trying to understand things with data, a lot of people don't understand. I also agree, coming to a forum and talking, it's exhausting the whole day. Attention spans are not peak. Mine personally, it's at the end of the day. My mind is already elsewhere, so I'll catch snippets. So if you could condense some of this information and put it perhaps in a website or make use of TikTok. Young people are thoroughly on TikTok. Like create a series where you condense this information in really short videos, comic strips. I'm plugging Mirror Arts, we can do that work for you. And then also for the government, if there have been any landmark cases around data, anybody who's been sued or anybody who's taken advantage of that law, please, if you could direct us to where we could read about those cases, it really helps to understand how we can take advantage of these laws and even just to understand the laws without getting into the jargon of it all. Yeah, that's just what I'd say. I'd really appreciate that.
Young people are speaking. Are you hearing them? Donors in the house, are you hearing them? The foundations, are you hearing them? Okay.
Yeah, my name is Sharon, and I'm here with Maureen on behalf of some places she didn't name in her introduction. I think in hearing Rian and Michelle speak, my only takeaway is that there's no shortcut to thinking together. Like, there are strengths that artists have in being able to communicate things in ways that mean something to people and that make it easy for people to absorb and learn. And there are things to learn from policymakers, from actors in government, etc. So the conversations are boring, but there are thinking processes that start as conversations and then turn into making something that speaks to the strengths that everybody has. So in my mind, I see workshops, I see workshops, sorry. I'm in an NGO, so workshops are a big and important space for me. And artists are really good at things like design thinking. So if you're in the same room together, I'm sure you would come up with something that's innovative, that responds to who Kenyans are, what their concerns are, and how they understand things. Yeah.
Excellent. So I don't know how you guys want us to do this. We have some food we could pick, come continue the conversation, or break for 10 minutes, have just one final, solutions, way forward, what do we need to do, and then probably a piece from the artist in the house, and then we call it an evening. The first option or the second option? The second option. Okay, so to Rudy at exactly 6:50. 7. At exactly 7. And then we'll wrap up in 10 minutes and then we call it an evening, right? And on that note, so as Paradigm Initiative, we are very aware that art is important, and we have short films. You can go to our website, watch, just talks about these things we are talking about in the room, but in a very creative way. In fact, we'll be launching one soon. I don't want to say the wrong date, but so far we have 3 films that talk about digital rights. How do we get feedback about the films? How do we know it's working? Okay, ask that question.
How are you getting feedback that the films or whatever you're putting on the website is making sense to people? No, to the intended audience, because I'm assuming this is not just for young people. There's, I can't remember his name. There are also people in Mashinani who also need to be exposed to data. I'm assuming you're making it for everyone, right? Yeah.
For one, you can watch it and then give us feedback. That would be one way, the easiest way. But very, very good point. Sawa. So just 10 minutes, please enjoy, indulge, know each other. There's so much, very many people, networks in this room. And then we come at 7 and just wrap this up. Sawa, sawa? Thank you. And thank you to the online audience. I don't know where they are. Which camera?
All right, welcome.
Lambda 2021 covers findings from 22 countries. It captures the gaps and offers recommendations for achieving a digitally inclusive and rights-respecting Africa. An analysis of data practices of digital lending applications in Africa highlights data protection laws in 19 countries with details on the personal data collected by lending app corporations. Ranking telcos and tech business compliance with human rights standards analyzes the themes of digital transformation in Angola, Central African Republic (CAR), Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC), and Nigeria, using the United Nations Guiding Principles (UNGP) for business and human rights. The need to assess, remedy, and provide a platform for dialogue with businesses on potential human rights violations was further dissected in the Advocacy Toolkit on Internet Freedom and Internet Intermediaries. In examining existing legislative frameworks against a widening digital divide, assessing the United Nations Cyber Treaty process, an African perspective spotlights the significance of a broader engagement of key stakeholders currently grappling with the effect of problematic cybercrimes legislations. The absence of data privacy and protection, illegal and blanket surveillance, internet shutdowns, and other rights violations negatively impacts democracy and economic development. Reporting addresses these challenges by facilitating responses when cases such as these are reported. Finally, read from beneficiaries of the LIFE Legacy Program on their achievement as we feel the echoes of their strides in the success stories.
Senegal, number one, because we're launching the LIFE program, which is one of our digital inclusion programs in Senegal through the support of ISOC Foundation. So we decided to just have, a celebration of the launch, as well as celebration of all our outputs over the COVID-19 pandemic period, because in spite of the pandemic and its challenges, we were able to pivot, we were able to adapt, and find new ways to implement activities from digital inclusion all the way through to digital rights. So that's the reason for Senegal.
With the vision to connect African youth to digital opportunities to improve their livelihood. We're here 14 years later, and while we are celebrating, I'm also in a reflective mood, because it is 14 years later, but the challenges and inequalities we face when it comes to access, digital access, affordability, inclusion, and digital empowerment still persist across the continent. Paradigm Initiative's vision and the goal of the LIFE program is to close that ever-widening gap.
Some of the activities that we've had during this celebration like I mentioned, the launch of the LIFE program, the official opening of PIN's first center in Senegal, which is our office in Chess, and the training center. We had the launch of our box set, which contains research outputs and reports that we've had from 2020 into 2021. The beauty of the box set is, which we saw during the Digital Rights Academy, which is also one of the activities, was we saw how it's facilitated the learning and the collaboration and shared knowledge during the sessions of the Digital Rights Academy. So it's a way of having a collection of all our outputs where it's easy to access for anyone of our stakeholders, from digital rights defenders to digital inclusion activists, to anyone who is interested in advancing the work of digital rights and digital inclusion on the continent. I wouldn't say it was easy to put together. It's always, any project is challenging. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect project, but I'm part of a very dynamic, proactive team who worked hard, put in countless hours, sleepless nights to ensure that this became a reality. Like I said, we worked virtually, so I had team members working from Cameroon, team members working from Zambia, team members working from Senegal, team members from different parts of Nigeria, team members from Zimbabwe, from Kenya. We all put hands together to put the festival together. And like you've seen, we've just ended. It was a huge success. It was very engaging. It was very celebratory. It was very lively. You know, we enjoyed ourselves. We got to network, we got to collaborate, we got to learn. So all in all, it's been a wonderful event and one that we're very proud of. The workshops were very successful. So these workshops were targeted towards Francophone, West Africa. We have Digital Rights Academy this year in Nigeria. We've had in Democratic Republic of Congo, and we're about to have one in Angola as well, in other countries as well. So it was a huge success. We had over 20 participants, very engaging, very lively, and at the end, you know, it birthed, you know, a new crop of digital rights defenders, people from media, from academia, from civil society, who are interested in learning about digital rights, increasing mindshare of digital rights in the minds of Africans across the continent, and doing the work to further digital rights and inclusion in Africa.
Thank you to all of you for your time. Thank you for staying. I really enjoyed the conversation. They were so lively, they were so organic, they were so engaging. Like Rigobert said, some people come to these workshops and it's just like taking notes. But you guys, you gave feedback to each other, you shared your ideas, we learned together. So thank you all so much. And I look forward to seeing you all again and hearing from all of you. So thank you very much.
All right, welcome.
Thank you so much, and a warm welcome to Nairobi, Karibuni, Nairobi. I hope I got that right. It's really an utmost pleasure to be here and welcoming you all on behalf of Paradigm Initiative. The Digital Rights and Inclusion Forum is being held under the theme, Building a Sustainable Internet for All.
And we are so glad that this is happening in Nairobi, the beautiful city. And DRIF, as you are aware, is an important platform where conversations on digital policy in Africa are shaped, policy directions debated, and partnerships are forged for action. And this year, the DRIF theme is building a sustainable internet for all. I wish to remind everyone that this forum is not a talk shop, it is a solution shop.
The reality is that
We can say everything we want in spaces like this, but if all of the stakeholders don't get their hands dirty, then we will come back 10 years from now to have the same conversations.
No government on the planet now needs to be convinced how important the internet is and how the internet would add to any developmental goals of any government. The bottom line for government is people, and at the end of the day, anything that will accelerate the potential of people in a country, that should be every government's interest.
Yangai na mobali nangai bantalo moka bamama balama mosuki sabilo belango ya batu ikwela yangai na chiwi supabilintama naibaki
So Drift 23 has brought different stakeholders into one place, and it's a beautiful thing that they've brought stakeholders from all over Africa. Now we are representatives as we are here. It is our responsibility to find the learning, to share the learnings that we get from this event to our respective countries so that they can be reached. The content that has been created here, the discussions that have been had here can be accessed by the people that we represent as organizations, as individuals, as media, as as who we are in this place. So for me, how those who are not here in Nairobi today can access this information, the onus is on the stakeholders that are present here today.
3, 2, 1. Can we have the report now? Woo! And that's where you have it. Woo! Fantastic. What a beautiful design.
Because of traffic, but we'll try and just release everyone in time. I'm trying to buy time so that everyone can sit down. Yes, thank you. All right, so one of the reasons we decided to do this with young people is to just listen to where everyone is at, if we are just doing our own things, but also just try and limit it to data protection in relation to AI. It's been very interesting to see how the conversation has evolved from let's localize, let's strengthen the office, to some young people don't know what you guys are doing. It's really, really interesting, and it's interesting feedback. So that was the one reason. Number two was to just ensure that everyone interacts and not work in silos. You're all in this room because you are in this space, and just to create that space And literally, you guys are the movers and shakers of matters digital rights and data protection in Kenya. So again, networking, but also just have a candid conversation with the Office of the Data Protection in Kenya, and we really appreciate Rose for coming. So as we wrap this up, before we get to solutions and way forward, I want to give a few minutes for anyone who has, because it's not every day we meet Rose anyway, for anyone who has, and this is a safe space, 100% safe space, just a specific question to Rose, this would be a perfect time. Any specific question about the topic we are talking about, issues, data protection, policy, law, way forward, what's the government thinking, what should we expect? In fact, us as civil society, this is exactly what we want, but you guys are not listening to us. This is your opportunity. If you do not take this opportunity, let us not see you on Twitter, or is it X, saying, oh, the data protection office does not do X, Y, Z. So this is an opportunity for us to, just talk about what we would want to see done differently. And I'm looking for anyone who is looking at me suggestively, like they want to say something. Yes. Introduce yourself.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Edward Kipkalia. I am a governance innovator. I also write on emerging technologies and cybersecurity for the Standard newspaper, but also the Business Daily. I work at Emerging Leaders Foundation Africa as the Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships Officer. And my question to the ODPC, I start by acknowledging that there is a lot of tremendous work that has been done. And one of the key issues that I have been following very keenly has been the issue of WorldCoin and the conversation around data privacy and data security. And there is emergence of conversation that WorldCoin is coming back this year. I just wanted to find out whether that is true, and if so, what are the measures that have been put in place to ensure that we don't lose our data of our fellow young people to these big tech companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalia. Any other question? Then she can just.
My question is, 3 years in, what are you guys proud of as like your achievements that you really say, hii tulichapa, and related to that is now currently what are you struggling with, and where in terms of support, where do you think you need our support as civil society organizations to help your work?
Brilliant.
My name is Claire from Feminist Conversation. He happened to mention WorldCoin, and I remember I was a victim of that whole charade. My mom was telling me my iris will blow out sooner or later. So, of course, I'm more digitally aware now than I was. But what happens to our data when such tech companies harvest our data? Does the government put policies to ensure that our data is safe?
Hey, that has sparked a lot of. You're also a culprit.
No, thankfully not. But just in the kind of same vein, this is one of the things that we explored, again, shameless plug paper. And one thing that keeps, recurring over and over again, this is not just a, ODPC problem for Kenya and not just a DPA problem for the rest of the region, but it's something that we keep seeing, that tech companies, private companies are coming into this region, and other regions, a global majority, and doing basically whatever they want. And so how do offices such as the ODPC look at this as an issue, and what is kind of the pipeline into finding a solution to issues of colonialism that even we have no ways to solve other than telling big tech, hey, stop doing this. But how do you deal with a problem that is not necessarily legal, but is more of a social issue? How do you conceptualize it, and how do you plan to work on things like that?
Okay, clearly, let's just take that first round, and then we come for the final round, we go home, okay?
All right. Okay, so I'll start with, I guess, the WorldCoin issue. Is it coming back? Well, the office issued a restriction or a ban for a period of 12 months. And after the 12 months lapses, towards the end of the year, we'll reassess and decide what happens. But it's not only for our office to do, because it's a national security issue as well. So it's also dependent on the national security framework. So I can't give you a precise answer as to whether WorldCoin is coming back or not. In terms of, what can be done, how do we ensure that youth are more aware? One of the things that we have undertaken as an office, and I guess the two victors are alive to that, I think we've worked with policy as well, is that we engage and we're open as an office to engage with civil society organizations. We don't restrict if there is projects that you're doing. We're always happy and welcome, to be a part of it, to even see how we can source funding so that we're educating. One of the things that is our mandate is creation of awareness. And so we're trying to ensure that we can actually reach not just people in Nairobi, but also people in other regions. So, and this, I guess, goes to what we're most proud of, or at least what I'm most proud of with the office. We started off small, 2020, November, December, where we were only 11 staff, and 11 including the secretary, the clerk, the drivers. And so technically, in terms of people who were technically savvy in terms of data protection, it was just the data commissioner and myself. And so seeing the office grow, we're now in, we've got 3 regional offices, but we're also in Huduma centers in Garissa, Nyeri, Eldoret. We're in Nairobi, Kisumu, Mombasa, Nakuru. And we have people on the ground that are consistently educating, engaging with the mamambogas, engaging with the business people in these regions, and we'll continue to expand in this way so that we can extend our reach as well. But again, as I've said, we don't have as much reach as civil society organizations, where it is your job, your day-to-day bread and butter, your strategies are specifically on how to reach people. So if you do have initiatives and you want us to be involved, find us. We're not unapproachable. I'm here, so if you want my number, I consent to Miriam giving it out. Find me on LinkedIn, find me on whatever social platform you can find me on, although I don't think I'm open on other social platforms. Reach out. We're here to serve the people. We're here to serve you. We're here to ensure that you're aware of what we're doing. So far, we've done awareness creation sessions in 47 counties, specifically to businesses, to ensure that they understand what their data protection obligations are. But we're now also engaging with data subjects, so individuals such as yourself and I, to actually appreciate what their rights are, to empower them to ask questions, to know that the internet isn't bad, giving information isn't bad, but they need to query why exactly they're giving information and what benefit it is or it will be to them. So I think I've answered 2 questions in that. So as well as where we're struggling, I think that was also captured in that. So that's that. In terms of how are we tackling some of these issues that are not necessarily legal, but they're social as well? So I think it's understood that data is fluid. It's understood as well the majority of these multinational organizations don't actually operate here, and so they take their information or our information outside of the country. One of the things that was spoken about, I think, by Victor was how do we come up with a unified approach on how to deal with multinational organizations. So one of the things that we have intentionally done as Kenya is to not I won't say invest resources, but to actually strategize on how to strengthen the Association of African Data Protection Authority, so that we're not just thinking as Kenya, we're not just thinking as Senegal or Morocco or South Africa or Ghana or Nigeria, we're actually thinking as a unit. So when we have problems with multinational organizations on issues relating to data protection, then we think as a unit. We come together, we share ideas, we strategize, and that has been very effective and will continue to be effective as we do that, simply because, and it's a relative, it's an organization that has been there for a while, but in terms of structure, it's starting to take form. And the Data Commissioner is actually the vice chair of this regional association. But one of the things that we're also engaging in is ensuring that we have a global voice when it comes to data protection, so that we're not just influencing the African space, but we're also able to talk on a global forum. So the Global Privacy Association, where we sit on a number of committees, including, I think, the Futures and Emerging Technology Committee, where we talk about what our needs are from a societal issue and engage with some of these multinationals on what they need to consider. And we bring them to the table as well. But obviously, again, without having civil society organizations that actually say these are the issues that we're having and bring, I guess, the people to the table with us, it's very difficult for us to understand. So again, I will emphasize, our doors are open. If you do want to engage with us, please do. It's the only way that we will be a competent authority. It's the only way that we will be able to actually serve the people in a manner that they need. It's the only way that we will be effective. So please, for those who haven't engaged with us, please do. And I'm sorry, I don't quite remember that. Well, the third question about the specifically with again, it was also on WorldCoin, but hopefully I've responded to the WorldCoin issues broadly, and that's satisfactory.
We'll only take one pressing. If you know it's pressing, not WorldCoin. Just allow me to take one last one. We promised to leave by 7. It's way. Oh, I asked you if you want to go home. You don't want to go home. It's a sleepover. Just one last one, and then, just to respect people's time.
Thank you. My name is Angela Minayo. I work at Article 19 Eastern Africa. My question is around the remedies under the complaints handling mechanism. We have seen a lot of penalties issued against companies, but I have yet to see a decision where a data subject gets remedies for harm. So how are you mitigating this? Are you going to come up with guidelines on what is harm? Because the Act just says harm can be both financial or non-financial, and it's not yet clear. We've seen applicants go to court and they're told that you don't go to court, your first port of call should have been at the ODPC. So are these remedies being are data subjects also getting compensation?
The simple answer to that is yes, they are. It might not be published in the newspapers, whatever it is, but if you go onto our website, www.odpc.go.ke, go into a question as well about cases that have been decided on, all that information is available there. You'll see our decisions. You'll also see the remedies or the compensation that we've given to data subjects, which we do. There is a structure that we adopt as well, which is available online, or if you want to know more about it, as an organization, you do have rights to access information, so you can make an application for access to information or just send an email to us and say that you want to understand how these remedies are calculated, and we'll provide that to you as well. But everything is available online, and yes, we have issued compensation to individuals.
No other hands. But we have to agree the ODPC is a friend of civil society. It's a very rare scenario to see, independent offices and government just working collaboratively. So just help me thank Rose for, just showing up. And answering the tough questions, and also just being patient to listen to us, complain about how things are not working, and giving solutions. And we really appreciate it. And also yourselves, thank you so much for showing up and for speaking and for representing your organizations. And sometimes you said you're not representing your organizations, which is also okay. It's fine. It's supposed to be a safe space. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow us to end this lovely conversation here. The beauty about conversations is it keeps us thinking. It helps us just know what other people are doing in the space, because it can get lonely if you do this alone, right? And also just have a voice as young people. Again, it's a very, very critical week. Data privacy, data protection, we need to talk about these things, and this is just the beginning of this conversation. I am not chasing you away. David has said he wants a sleepover, that's fine. I'm not chasing you away, but I know there are people who really, really needed to go by 7. We've gotten feedback that we need to start this a little bit early, like 4 probably, but tell Kenyans it's 3 so that they are here by 4. We've also gotten that feedback, but I would just request that I don't know who's in charge of the screen, there's a QR code that I would just request us to scan. It will take less than a minute as we wrap this up. And Judith, you won't go so far because you'll give the final vote of thanks. Final on behalf of Paradigm Initiative. I think there's more soda, there's a few other things, and I know people want to catch up. New Year, how are you surviving? I'm just waiting for the QR code to come up. All right. Thank you. Yep. Ati uko na mulika mwizi? Exclusion. Ataka pia uko na mulika mwizi? Ni touch too. All right, so just very quickly, it will take a minute. We really appreciate. As we've said, this is the first one, and we want to get better at this. Thank you. Iko mbali. Right. Mtu wa kwanza kumaliza tuko na bahasha. Brown envelope. It's far. I don't know how you will get to it and just be the first person to feel and get the bahasha. Me, I don't know. I'm just telling you. No, seriously, whoever is done first will just let us know. But also, Judith, we could take this time and just vote of thanks for everyone who showed up and made time for this cafe. Thank you.
Wow. I usually like to be behind the cameras, but I keep on being thrust at the forefront. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We've really loved this conversation. It's the first one of this conversation that we are having, and thank you guys for showing up. And special thanks to you, our key speaker and our guest. Thanks for honoring our invitation. And thanks everyone who honored our invitation as well. We are glad you could join us, and we look forward to hosting you in similar discussions. And we hope you're going to come up and also invite other people. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Yes. Feel free to mingle. There's more, pizza, juice, soda. Yeah, feel free. Oh, man. I am the communications manager at Paradigm Initiative. Yeah, so that's what I currently do. I serve in that position. Thank you.
Who's done? Seriously, I'm not kidding.
All right, welcome.
Lambda 2021 covers findings from 22 countries. It captures the gaps and offers recommendations for achieving a digitally inclusive and rights-respecting Africa. An analysis of data practices of digital lending applications in Africa highlights data protection laws in 19 countries with details on the personal data collected by lending app corporations. Ranking telcos and tech business compliance with human rights standards analyzes the themes of digital transformation in Angola, Central African Republic (CAR), Democratic Republic of Congo (DRC), and Nigeria, using the United Nations Guiding Principles (UNGP) for business and human rights. The need to assess, remedy, and provide a platform for dialogue with businesses on potential human rights violations was further dissected